day out there to all my listeners, and welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way? And for those new listeners out there, I just want to share with you what this podcast is all about. It's for those individuals who are ready. I mean, really ready to move forward, a little unsettled about your life and things that's going on. And by being unsettled and having those roadblocks and those self imposed barriers, it's time for us to mitigate those things that's preventing us from living our best life on your terms. And also, Is Your Way in Your Way is my book, the title of my book, and it's a self-discovery journal for women on how to restore yourself, learn from experiences, and be your true self again. And we talk about topics on this podcast related to personal development, personal growth, business development, and even it allows you an opportunity to do some self-reflection. And with that said, our title today is Just Be You. And who better to talk about that with us is Andrea Johnson. And Andrea, I'd like to welcome you to the stage. Hello there.
Hello, Cassandra. I am happy to be here. To
I
just
am
be
happy.
me.
Yeah, I'm happy you're here, so I can just be me too. So listeners, my new listeners, what I do is I just read a little bit about Andrea, just so you can get a little background on her before we delve into our conversation. Now, Andrea Johnson is a certified Maxwell leadership speaker, trainer, and coach. Empowers executives and founders to lead authentically and confidently, positively impacting their lives and organization. She was raised in Seoul, South Korea, and experienced in navigating cultural diversity. She understands the importance of emotional resilience. Her journey from battling obesity and depression to becoming a healthy adoptive parent inspired her to develop intentional optimism, a framework for living out values and goals with excellence. Andrea's passion lies in equipping female leaders to redefine corporate culture and lead effectively through improved communications and team dynamics. She has her podcast, and the name of her podcast is Stand Tall and Own It. So female leaders who are ready to make a difference, and also who are ready to make an impact by discovering and understanding their values. Wow, we have a lot to talk about, and I love the topic, Just Be You.
Me too.
Yeah, Andrea, I'd like to know, and my listeners always like to know, what was transformational leader and coach? What was going on in your life back then?
Well, I like your word unsettled.
Mm,
I like that you said that. I actually wrote it down because I usually talk about being disempowered,
mhm,
and that's a big word. A lot of times we don't know what it means, but I had a 25-year career in university higher education, like university schools of medicine. We've discussed. I started at Johns Hopkins University.
mhm.
I actually met my husband in grad school. I actually worked there as well.
Oh,
But I worked in the oncology center there. I worked my way up from administrative assistant into research administration. I helped get clinical trial grants. I made sure that all the money happened and all of the regulations were followed. And then I moved to the University of Virginia and did very much the same thing there, and ended up a business manager and operations manager in nephrology. So I, at any given time, managed upwards of 20 people doing clinical trial work, doing grant work, and I just knew that this is just not what I wanted to do. And I had, and I'm sure your listeners will relate to this, I had responsibility without authority. I
mm,
felt like I was consistently compromising who I was for the bigger picture.
mhm,
I felt stifled and unsupported, and I'm just going to use your term unsettled. I felt
mhm.
balanced, like we're always looking for this work-life balance, and it just never happens.
Yeah.
So I felt all of those things, and quite frankly, and a lot of your listeners may be here as well, I was bored.
Mm,
I was made for something
wow.
bigger, right? And
Yeah.
I was bored. And so these are the women the people that I like to talk to, because these are the women that say, oh yeah, I need something different. But what I had to do was on my own. I had
Mm,
to figure it out. I didn't know where to look. And
mm,
I had this wonderful background, and I had, you explained I grew up overseas, but
yeah,
mine that I'd known since I was 17 introduced me to John Maxwell and the Maxwell team so that
yeah.
I could get my certification in DISC consultancy, in so for behavioral analysis, speaker, trainer, and coach, and it introduced me to all these really purposeful leadership tactics and principles. And
Mm,
I've
mhm.
been on a self-discovery journey and on a personal growth journey since I was 20, because I put
Oh,
myself in the hospital for bulimia and depression when I was 20. And I said, something's got to give.
okay.
Yeah. And so we grow sometimes intentionally. And most of the time we're just like going along with and just keeping up with and trying to learn all the skills.
Oh,
And I finally hit that point when we lost my mother. I was 50, and we lost her to breast cancer. And I said, no, something's got to give. I want to make sure that I live every day well.
mm,
And I'm tired of managing the status quo. Big institutions are great. They do amazing things, but I needed something different. And that's when I kind of just pivoted and moved on in a different direction. And I've been on
mhm,
my own. I left the University of Virginia in August of 21. So
uh-huh.
I've been on my own ever since.
Wow. So you had a turning point
Oh,
when
yes.
your mom passed,
Hmm.
and most of us do, and some of us don't. When something traumatic happens in our lives, then we're like, I want to really start living my life. And I'm not really, I'm just surviving. I'm not thriving. And many of us do that and just don't know what to do. So, and like I tell my listeners that I guess it's 70% of the people die with regrets. They've not been able to accomplish what their ordained duty was. I call it
Sure.
something because that's when you're get at a peace, when you're actually doing something and you're feeling real good about it. And so my question to you is, so what do you believe qualified you to do the type of work that you're doing?
I am who I am.
Mhm.
And I decided to. So here's the deal, Cassandra, you know this, and I bet your listeners do too. We all develop skills through
Mhm.
every job that we have, through every experience that we have, every volunteer position we've ever had, every class we've ever taken, every child we've raised. We have experience in relationship building and leadership and all this, and we don't realize what we have.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so getting certified in leadership, speaking, training, and coaching, all that did was remind me of the skill set that I already have.
Hmm.
And being able to look back and say, wow, I have, like you said, multicultural navigation.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that growing up overseas in school with kids from 65 different countries would allow me the ability to say, I need to see all sides of this. I can't walk in with only my perspective. Now, there was plenty of retraining after I got back to the States and was in my
Yeah.
corporate type work that told me, no, 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 we do it this way. And so
That's
I
right.
did have to rediscover that. So there was some deconditioning and deconstructing that had to happen. But being willing to say, I'm qualified because of who I have been created to be. I
Good.
am qualified because I am by nature a relator. I am by nature somebody who creates belonging in other people.
Mhm.
People would show up in my office and shut the door and say, I needed to come talk to you because you are a safe place for me.
Yes.
And I didn't plan on being a safe place.
Exactly.
It's not something you think, I'm going to be a safe place today. I
That's
mean, we
right.
can do that. But
Yeah.
when someone says that to you out of the blue, it will stop you in your tracks if you're paying attention.
Mhm.
And if we stop and listen to what's going on around us, we will start to hear what other people say and, about how we act and how we show up. And sometimes we need to change what we do and how
Yes.
we do that. But many times it will tell us the strengths that we're not paying attention to and where they are and how to find them.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
something as simple as my hair. I cut my own hair. I've done it for years. It's very easy. I do it better than anybody else because I'm willing to get it wrong and fix it tomorrow.
Okay.
But I could have what I think is the worst hair day. And I'm walking across, this is back when I was still working at the university, half 3/4 of a mile to my car, walking across grounds. Random gentleman says, I say gentleman, probably young guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tall. He looks like a basketball player. He says, you have the most beautiful hair. And it just kind of,
Oh,
well, thank you, and it just, we don't pay it. Those kind of things will stop us in our tracks, but we don't
yes.
pay attention sometimes when somebody says, I came to you because I thought, you're a really good creative thinker and I really need, or they may not even say it that way. They might say, you seem to come up with good ideas, or I need some help figuring this out.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
they're telling you you're a strategic thinker. They're telling you these things. And so being able to look back on that and say, I just need to be me. I don't need to be anybody else. That's what
Mm.
qualifies me to do the work I do.
That's good. And something else, my mom used to say that you don't see yourself as others do. And what happens there when you do get a compliment or someone, as you indicate, I like your hair, you're a safe person, rather than saying, "Oh, stop. Oh,
Hmm.
your hair is really a mess." We kind of degrade, minimize,
Mhm.
mitigate what people are saying. Rather than like, "Well, thank you," as you did, and accepted that, and like, "Wow, that's who I am. That's good. I appreciate that." And because you do your own hair, and because people came to you, because you have all these skills, all of that was on purpose.
Yes.
And I say that because when it's on purpose and it's something for you to do about it, it's like a nagging, a gnawing, a fire in your belly, so to speak. That this is me. I'm really loving that. So I really appreciate that. Now, Andrea, was it difficult for you to transition from a comfortable, even though mentally that's not what you wanted to do, but you were in a comfort zone, even though again mentally you really weren't, but your physical body was. What was that transition like? Because a lot of listeners want to do what you're
Mm.
doing, but they in this comfort zone, it's like they're on the edge and they just don't want to fall off the cliff.
Sure. And I'm going to just be straight up and tell you, I didn't do it the exact perfect way. I,
Mhm.
I started when I recognized that most of my adult life, I had been trying to be an entrepreneur. Like I was an Amway person. I was a Mary Kay lady, but
Mm,
I then recognized, and if somebody wants to look at how they could do that on their own, I think
yeah.
it's important to look at whether or not you're a product entrepreneur or a service entrepreneur. They're very different things.
Mm,
I also realized and having done these different, and I do Plexus, that kind of stuff, but I'm also not a product entrepreneur. I'm also not someone else's business.
I
It's
love it.
very, very clear that I need to do my own thing. Some
Yeah.
people are franchise oriented. Some people just want to be their own boss. But being willing to look back and see, okay, this is something I've been trying to do for a long time. None of
Mm,
those actually worked. What is the next thing? And as soon as I started studying, I was like, oh, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I decided to create an exit plan. And there are people out there who are coaches that can give you the step by step and a lot of the practical things to do with an exit plan.
mhm.
I started them, and then my job got in my brain, and quite frankly, my nervous system got to a place where it was just too much that I needed to transition faster than I wanted to, or than
Mhm.
I had initially planned. But I had already done things like gotten rid of debt, paid down, whatever debt I had. I had literally pared down for the family of three to the
Yeah.
cheapest stuff that we could do to
Yeah.
reduce the amount of outlay that I needed, or the money that I needed to bring in, the revenue that I needed to bring in. But I have to say, I didn't do this single. I have a husband who's extremely supportive. He's a
Mhm.
small church pastor, so it's not like he was like in a corporate job where we could,
Right.
but at the same time, there was that baseline. So I did have that security. But you talk about leaving a steady paycheck,
Mhm.
leaving, I mean, I had been on university insurance and 401, 403Bs and um, like dental and Davis Vision and all of those things. I've been
Yeah.
on those for 25 years. My
Wow.
husband didn't even know what it meant to find insurance because he had always been on mine. And
That's right.
it was an amazing benefit. Even what is it when you do they match your stuff, matching.
401s,
Yeah,
K.
they'll match it with your 403B, like
Yep.
whatever you spend. All of those things are I had to come to the understanding that they were not the safety net I thought they were.
Mhm.
I know people who have lost their jobs with these same universities at the drop of a hat, and their safety net is gone and they weren't making an exit plan.
Yeah.
So I had to transition my thinking from this is a safe place I can create my own safety. And
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't been overnight, but we pared down what we could. We went in the marketplace. We utilized the things that we could. My husband's father's retired U.S. Navy Reserve, so we are USAA. So we learned how to find those kind of financial things. But
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, it's taken almost longer to make the shift in my mind than it
Mm.
did to make the shift with the practical things.
Yes.
Because we have what I call my ABCs, my assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning, all that
Mm-hmm.
conditioning we had throughout our career, it's very difficult to leave that behind and to say, I have something to offer. Now,
Right.
I am a Maxwell speaker trainer coach, so I can offer Maxwell things, but I also have my own courses and my own coaching that I have developed that
Mm.
marries well with that. What's
Yes.
interesting is that the closer I get to being myself, the more my products sell.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just, and I looked at my husband the other day, I said, I saw another one of these things. I said, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Because I can see that what I have to offer people, when you find the right people to talk to, and it just takes a while,
Yeah.
just know what your tolerances are. If you
Mm-hmm.
cannot tolerate risk, then you know what kind of savings you need to build up. You know
Mm-hmm.
what kind of insurance you need to purchase. You know what you need to have in place. But if you can tolerate risk, and you're willing to go out there and risk what it takes to do what you love to do,
Yeah.
then go for it and find a community of other women who are doing the same thing. There's so
Exactly.
many out there.
Exactly. You sound like this saying is when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Yeah. If
Absolutely.
things just come to you when you're there, and it's like you indicated, it's all in the mind,
Yes.
the openness. And that's why I want to transition to these core values,
Okay.
because core values they're significant to leadership.
Mm.
And I'd like for you to share with my listeners, because a lot of people, they'll say values core, but a lot of people
Yeah.
aren't sure what
Correct.
that is. So I
Sure.
want you to explain. I know I find that out so much. Like, well, my value is. I'm like, that's really not a value. So explain to people, what is a core value, and why do you believe that? Well, actually, once you do, how do you understand it and uncover it for
Sure.
individuals?
So I think defining and giving a differentiation between what the terms that we're using actually
Yeah.
mean is important here,
Yes.
because it's a conversation that's out there. A lot of people are talking about values. They're talking about core values of businesses. I shouldn't have used air quotes. Those are real, right? Those are very real. And I'm talking about the values, the core values of my own internal wiring, or your internal wiring. It's
Mm-hmm.
how you were created. It's your non-negotiables. And the
Yeah.
definition I like to use is closer to something Brene Brown does. It's the principles and priorities that guide your actions, and they
Mm-hmm.
represent the foundational convictions that
Mm.
allow you to navigate these complex situations, all the wind and the waves, all while keeping your identity and your
Mhm,
authority at the forefront.
mhm.
Now, when I understand what those things are in my life, then I can look around and say, where can I plug in to where those core values that are me as a person are not going to be dishonored? People
Mhm.
talk about aligning with certain values.
Right.
Both the universities I worked for, fabulous work that they do.
Yeah.
And, but my top core value is autonomy of thought. I'm an out of the box thinker. Don't tell me
Mm.
what to think. I am a
Critical.
natural deconstructionist. I'm a natural critical thinker, and
Mhm.
I'm always looking for a better way, right?
Mm.
So when I
Mm.
would hire someone and say, this is a launch pad for you as an administrative assistant, not a landing pad. And in
Right.
2 years, when they grow and they move on, and the chief of the division says, why did they leave? We need
Yeah.
people who are going to stay here forever. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
I don't do the status quo. So that's how my personal core values started to become. That's an example of how your personal core values can be either dishonored or not aligned with organizational values.
Mhm.
And I like to say that organizational values are really more of a mission and vision,
Yeah.
right? And you can have personal mission and vision, but those things are all outside of you. Core
Yes.
values are inside of you. And
Yes.
so I like to tell people that they are things that you cannot see, but they have very visible results, right? When somebody tries to tell me what to think, it becomes very I mean, it's very clear that I'm going to have a problem with that. And my husband learned it by saying things like, wouldn't you agree that, you know,
Right.
I don't know how to answer that. And finally, when we figured out what it was, he now says, what do you think about this?
Exactly.
Totally different.
Right.
So now that way we can move forward. But the core values are things that they bring you joy. They are things they're the things that make you angry every day. They are the things that if one of them, like especially if it's a top one for you, if I have a client whose their top core value is respect, which sounds like a real cliched one, but it really isn't. And so when you disrespect, you're done.
You're done.
Right.
Yeah.
Get a thumbs up for that one. But there's also one who's got reliability is her top. And so it's very much, I am reliable and I need you to be reliable.
Yes.
That's another thing about them is they're what I would call reciprocal. It can't just be one direction. If I just want you to respect me, that's nothing but narcissism. But if I want to respect you and I want you to respect me, that's a core value. So there's different ways things that we can look at that will help us determine what they are. But the fastest way I tell people to figure out where your core values kind of might lie is look back in the last, I don't know, week or month. It could be today.
Yeah.
The things that just angered you, like you were afraid that you were going to get in trouble, right? Because you got that angry.
Yeah.
If there's something like that, I promise you underneath somewhere is a core value that's being dishonored.
Exactly.
I mean, my husband and my son, both of them, honesty is huge for them. It's like, do not lie. Do not lie to me.
That's right. Right. Like loyalty is another one too.
Yes.
It's just so many boundaries, work-life balance, things of that nature.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you indicated that that's critical for leadership. And when I hear you talk, the word expectations come up because a lot of people are like, they want this because you should do this because their expectation, that's what they want to do.
Sure.
So, for people to kind of understand, it's kind of like this. There are two people that can have the same things, but yet they're unhappy. And they're unhappy because they both have different expectations.
Sure.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah. And especially if the expectations are not laid out clearly.
Exactly.
That's a bigger problem.
Exactly. You're exactly right. I want to talk about, you said that you believe emotional resilience is earned. Why is that? Because, resilience is so important. You got to be resilient on a lot of things. And some people just give up. But why do you say that has to be earned?
Well, just like you don't get up today and run a marathon unless you're the dude who did it first. You can't just become resilient unless you're just inherently a resilient person. Some people have that gift. Most of us don't. Most of us give up when it's hard. Most of us say, well, I'm going to go a different direction. And that may be a way to develop resilience, but it's like developing muscles, Cassandra. It's really about saying, how long does it take me to get up from this one?
Yes.
How can I? And I want to make it very clear. This is not putting rose-colored glasses on. Building resilience is the ability to take a look at a really hard circumstance, figure out what you need to do about it, how you need to get up and move, live through it, how you're going to survive it, and then how to go about becoming better and moving on from it.
Right.
And I'll use my mother's illness as an example. She had breast cancer and she had lupus before that. So her grandchildren didn't really know her before she was sick. And but for her, for her, she was consistently learning, how do I overcome this so that I can be the kind of grandmother that Nana or Nina that she wanted to be. Whereas for me, I didn't have to go through those physical things, but going through the grief of losing her was not only a crucible and cathartic, but it was also a training ground for anything else that I'm going to experience in the future. Now I
Mhm.
have a place to measure, okay, I went through that.
Right.
How does this compare? Right. And
Exactly.
so when you start, it's a little bit like laying a foundation. When you start dealing with things from a perspective of that was really hard and I
Mhm.
learned from it and I'm going to move forward, then you can say, all right, how does that measure up? Oh, this is way harder. All right, well, I guess I'm going to learn some new stuff from this. Doesn't mean
Exactly.
we don't shake our fist at the sky. Doesn't
Right.
mean we don't pound on the floor and scream and cry. Oh, I didn't mean to rhyme. It doesn't mean we don't do those things and we don't experience the feelings that are there.
Yeah.
It means that we go into it with purpose. And it might take us a little while,
Yeah. Mhm.
but in order to build the muscle, you have to do it. I'm starting more yoga and like strength yoga, and that chair against the wall is a killer for my quads.
Right.
But I have to build that up. So every time they say, we do the chair, I'm like, oh, do we have to?
I
But we
know.
do it, right? Because I know that eventually it's going to help me be stronger.
Right, exactly, exactly. Wow, resiliency. And I love that when you said, I like the part when you said it has to be earned because if we look back over our lives, there are a lot of things that we were resilient with, and we have to remind ourselves that I got through that, you know.
Right.
And you know, and it always disturbed me when people say, "Oh, you'll be okay," you know, it's gonna be all right. You're not the only one that went through that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that doesn't help at
I know
all.
they mean well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's another side to resiliency is that we then get to mentor it and share it with other people and help them along.
Mhm.
I have a friend who's really, really good. She unfortunately she lost both her parents when she was in her 20s.
Mhm.
And she was the one who helped walk me through what it would be like to lose my mother. And I realized at 50 how what I considered to be a terrible friend I had been to her when she
Yeah,
lost her parents.
yes,
Even though I thought I could do that, even though I thought I could give her what she needed, I couldn't. But she had something to offer
yeah,
because she had been through it. And being willing to see how we can move outside of ourselves, that helps you grow even more and even faster.
yes, yes, that's right. And that's when I think it enables you to tap into your circle of influence. You know, the individuals that you surround yourself with is good. Relationships are critical. You know, so I like that you know who to tap into. I call them my board of directors. You know, there's somebody that keeps me real, somebody that talks about my finances, a spiritual board. You know,
Mm.
there's things like that that I can go to and know who to go to, you know, when there's certain things that occur in my life. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the longest time, I'm a pastor, like a small church pastor's wife. And for
Mhm.
pastors' wives, it can be difficult to have friends in that community just
Yeah,
because the things you know and the things you don't.
right. That's right.
And because you're in kind of this leadership position, whether you want to be or not. And that's kind of where a little bit of the unconventional leadership stuff came out for me. But I ended up with serendipitously or God ordained, however you want to talk about it. I ended up with these friends who were all outside the church from different spiritual backgrounds
Yeah.
that saw me for who I was
Yeah.
and appreciated me and loved me and cheered me on through all of it. And I was, kind of, God, why won't you give me these, specific type of friends? He says, look around you, woman. I have given you beautiful friends.
Yeah.
And when I was willing to see that and appreciate it for what it was, everything in me changed and my friendships blossomed. And now I can see them as, I love that board of directors. It's like, yes, there's one I go to for specific things. There's
Exactly.
another one I go to for this, that, and the other, but they all have a function in my life. And I think as women, a lot of times, especially in the corporate world,
Hmm.
we feel like, or we perceive that there's only one leadership spot or there's only one place to go for women. And I want to say it is not true.
That's
We
right.
can link arms and make sure every time I work with somebody, I'm like, who mentors you? Because I'm a coach. I
Yes.
don't mentor you. I have women that I mentor that are
Hmm.
totally outside of that. But who is your mentor? Who is your advocate? And when you have those things in your life, that's all going to help you develop into the kind of leader you need to be.
Yeah.
And that's going back to the core values piece. When you understand those, then you can lead with authority. When you understand, you can lead with conviction and passion. When
Yes.
you understand who you are, you can lead with confidence, which means that you don't have to fight with other people for the position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't have to defend your boundaries because they're very clear, because you are confident in who you are. That
Exactly.
makes you authentic and magnetic, which means that more people will be drawn to you. It's counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
The more we give and the more we are willing to know ourselves and give of ourselves, the more we get. But that's just the way it works.
That's right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. What's the difference to you between a coach versus a mentor?
Um, a mentor is someone who is probably going to be there with you through thick and thin longer
Mhm.
term. It might
Mhm.
be that they're a mentor for a specific thing.
Mhm.
Mentors tend to be more teaching oriented.
Mhm.
They tend to be someone who's walked the path already.
Yep.
And so maybe a mentor would also be a role model. And
Mhm.
that is very natural for me. I do that in my natural life.
Yeah.
Coaching is much more targeted. It's less teaching. And I do a little bit of hybrid coaching where I do some teaching because I'm leadership trained. And so we're
Yeah.
looking at those principles. But in general, a coach is somebody who helps you get from point A to point B faster than you could have done that on your own. We
Okay.
got the Olympics coming up this summer.
Yeah.
And when you watch these sprinters, I love to watch the women get out there and just run, right? I mean, it's just like, how fast can they go? It's amazing to me. But they didn't get there without a coach. They might have natural talent, but they might have been doing one thing wrong, or they
Yeah.
might not have been training the way they needed to. Their coach's job is to help them get from the starting line to the finish line faster
Right.
than they can get there on their own. So I think being willing to see that. And then the third one I mentioned was an advocate. The
Yes.
advocate is not a mentor and is not a coach. An advocate is somebody who is in another room when you're not there saying, you really should check out Cassandra.
Yes.
She, if there's somebody for this project, I think she would do a better job for it than
Exactly.
me. Or if you're
Mhm.
looking for somebody to do X, Y, and Z for you, this is the person you want.
Yeah.
That's your advocate who's willing to, and they may be ahead of you. They may be
Right.
right there with you,
Yeah.
but whoever's talking about you in the room when you're not there, that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Because at certain terms like sponsor, advocate, mentor,
Yes.
coach, and people just kind of misconstrue, not clear. So I wanted you to talk about that so that my listeners can be clear on differentiate between those two, but we went to three. So
Sorry.
yeah. The individuals that you coach, what triggers them to come to you? It has to be a trigger.
One of two things. Yeah,
Okay.
one of two things. Number one, if they're coming to me for executive leadership coaching, many times they've been promoted into a position and they don't have the training. Or they are just, really excited about being a leader. So when I do executive leadership coaching, that's usually what it is. It's somebody that's fairly new or has just been in this position and realizes, all right, my talent got me here, but it's not going to take me to the next step. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the executive leadership coaching that I do. My core values coaching that I do specifically is for women who are, like I shared earlier, like unsettled. It's they're trying to figure it out, because the three main aspects to my business are understanding yourself, which is core values, communicating it, which is DISC, behavioral, and then intentional optimism, which is how we live it all out. So I like to start with people, if I can, in the core values area, because they're the ones who are saying, I don't have authority. I have responsibility without authority. And when I mentioned one of my most recent clients said, as soon as you said authority, I'm in. And I'm like, okay. And so that's kind of the triggers when they look around and say, something's missing. And I need to know where to start, and the best place to start, whether you're a solopreneur or a manager or wanting to grow in the corporate structure, or if you've got a business that's been around for a while and you're ready to do something new with it, or just to grow yourself. That's the trigger for them, is like, I'm unsettled. I need to know what my authority is and how to lead from conviction. That's a trigger.
Right. And able to use their voice is another that where women have issues. I wouldn't say issues, but those are some challenges that I'm aware that we have.
Well, and we might know that we want to, but we don't know how to do it.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we apologize for being strong or putting our boundaries out there or putting our stuff out there. And that's
Mhm.
because we don't have that confidence yet and we don't have that authority yet. So if you
Exactly.
find yourself that's another trigger, right? See, I
Uh-huh.
learn every time.
That's
That's
right.
you find yourself apologizing for being a good leader or for
Exactly.
taking control of a project or for expressing an opinion or for saying, this is a boundary for me.
Mhm.
We should talk. I got some good training for you.
Right, right. That's good. And it's interesting because a lot of that can come from your childhood. And I
Mm,
always like that, because, growing up as little girls, shh, you should listen, don't speak up. Just, so a lot of that we have to retrain ourselves or well, another word I would say is not empower yourself, but I can't think of the word that I want to use. But anyway, it may come back to me. Um, Personal growth.
mhm,
That's what I wanted to say. It's all about personal growth that we have to continue to grow. If we're not
mm,
growing, I always say we're dying.
mhm.
So why are we here? Where did now this is the name of your company, Intentional Optimism. Is
Mhm.
that correct? Where did
That is
that
correct.
yeah, where did that come from?
Well, I mentioned a little while ago that my mother died when I was 50,
Mhm,
and I went into a bit of a crucible of sorts. My
mhm,
mother was like a bottle of champagne, Cassandra. She was one of those women that would walk in the room and everybody go, Judy,
mhm,
and she had that effervescent personality. She could talk to
mhm,
anybody about anything. She was
mhm,
smart.
mhm,
But she didn't accomplish all I think that she wanted to accomplish, and
mhm,
partly because of the conditioning that we've had. I come from an evangelical background in the South, right? So there's
yeah.
certain things you said, girls are and famously, my mother even said to me, "Not everybody wants to hear your opinions, Andrea," when I was young, and now people pay me for my opinions.
Exactly.
So watching her watching her go through that and to die well and with dignity and fighting
Mhm,
to the end and making sure that all the strings that could possibly be tied up were tied up. I went and inside myself and I said, all right, I can't I can't do this any longer. I need to make sure that I am living each day to the fullest. And I want to be able to say, what do I want? How do I want to live this out? So it
mhm,
started as just my own personal reflection. And I
mhm,
realized I had this big, long, you know, spreadsheet of things that I put together. And I realized they fell into these categories. And when I started putting them in there and realizing I could put these, and this is kind of the work I do with people with core values work, is
mhm.
I put them in categories and I realized, oh my goodness, these are tenets that I want to live out, their attitudes, their mindsets. And so I came up with 6 tenets of intentional optimism.
Mhm.
And would you like to hear them?
I would. My
Okay.
listeners would love to hear
So
them.
and I do have you can find what is intentional optimism. There's a downloadable free sheet because it's a lot, but the main pieces are 6 tenets. They're bookended by optimistic and intentional, just so you know where we're starting and
Okay.
ending.
All right.
But being optimistic is more than just a sunny disposition. It's having hope. It's
Mhm,
knowing that I'm confident that I have what I need to make this first decision. I have the
mhm,
information that's there. A lot of times we don't realize it, but it also means taking that information and doing something. I can be proactive. And if
mhm.
I don't have any optimistic view, then I am not likely to be proactive.
Exactly.
The second one is being present. And we hear a lot of talk about that one too. And it's more than just being in the moment. It has to do with having some wonder. One of the things that my husband said to me when we were dating is he says, you have this sense of wonder. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
everything out there is amazing to me. And
Yeah.
then I realized that's something that I still want to cultivate. So I call it grown-up wonder. I know why
Mhm.
the stars twinkle, right? I
Yeah.
know why the crocus comes up. But because of that, my wonder is deeper and more wide and more intense. But it also embodies being generous. I mentioned I've adopted son. He's 15 and I'm 57.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
not like I think I have patience with years, but it
Yeah.
means being open to interruptions, being generous with my time. And if you want to be a mentor, you're going to have to do that and offer that to people and being kind and open. All of those things make us more present in the moment. The,
Right.
the third is energetic. And this is all about
Mhm.
industrious attitude, figuring out new ways to do things. What is my next step? For those ladies who are interested in leaving their corporate life for their own entrepreneur life, this one's going to resonate with you because it means you're probably coming up with ideas all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for how to do something better, but it also includes joy and excitement. And this is a piece I got from my mom. She could just, she had that twinkle in her eye almost all the time. And you just knew something was going on in there and you could just feel it. And she would just get like this. And when she was around her grandkids, she did it the most. But it's when you start feeling that joy and excitement over what you're doing and in your present moment, you share that with people. And it means that they feel it too. And that way we can focus on life rather than not life, right? Things that bring life and focusing in that area.
Right.
The fourth one is courageous. This is leadership. This is adventure, being willing to be the first one out there. And this is where that resiliency comes in.
Yeah.
If you're the lead goose in that formation, you get all the headwind. But you know what they do? They rotate in and out so that it's not always the same lead goose. And that way they rest and they build it up. So it's building that resilience and having the courage. Women won't apply for a job if they think that they're not 100% qualified. It's having the courage to apply for a job when you're 65%, like a man, 65% qualified. And when they ask you in an interview, do you know Excel? I say, yes, I know Excel. How do I do Excel? Right? Because I know Excel, right? It's not, I can learn anything. So it's that adventure and being willing to lead and sometimes just being willing to do the hard thing, right? Step up and do that. The fourth one is one that was probably the most difficult for me to own up to. But when I said somebody came to my office and said, you're a safe place, that told me I have some wisdom that they're looking for. And being wise is a gift that we can give to people. I thought only like octogenarians with purple curly hair were wise, right? I thought that's how it worked, and that's not. We all have wisdom that we've gained through our experience, and we can use wisdom in how we talk to people and how we listen, how we respect people. And when we exhibit that, it means that people are much more comfortable in our presence, right? And then being intentional is the sixth one. The sixth, it's all about purpose. You talk about purpose. It's all about having a plan. It's all about growth. You mentioned personal growth. And I don't have you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? And John Maxwell talks about the very first thing we have to do in personal growth is be intentional. We have, because when we graduate from school, we've left this structure and this scaffolding, but we don't put something in place for us. If we don't make our own plan, then the likelihood of our growing is very small. So these are, you can see their attitudes and mindsets of saying, I want to be more glass half full than half empty. I want to be kind and open and present. I want to be life focused. And because when I think about being life focused, it cuts down on my gossip. It cuts down on my complaining. It makes me look for the best in people. Right. All of these things are very helpful in living out what my core values are and my goals.
Wow. And wasting time is another one that we do. And life is short.
Yes. And when you say, because I said, this is how I want to live. And so for the first couple of years in my business, this was really all I talked about until I realized that's starting on the outside and I needed to go deeper. So that's why I am now basically like, we start with core values and we end with intentional optimism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just coasting then. And that's why I say, is your way in your way. And you work things so to kind of get out of your way. And that's why I said to become your true self again, because that's really all the stuff that's in your way is not always your true self. The comparing, I can't do this. I'm not going to apply for that job. I don't have the courage. I don't have the confidence, all of those things, because everything we need is inside of us. Everything we need,
Isn't that amazing?
It's very amazing. If people are looking for it out there, it's not out there. It's right in here. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I always like to say success is an inside job.
Yes. Exactly.
Leadership and growth is an inside job. Transformation is always an inside job.
That's right. That's right. I used to work for Marriott, and Mr. Marriott used to say, what did he say? Hire friendly, teach technical.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, he always said that we can learn the technical stuff, but that innate talent, that gift, that friendliness is in there. It's an innate
Mhm.
talent. So I used to love when he would say that, and I would think about it as I was hiring people. Teach
Mm,
them the technical and hire the friendly people. I'm like,
mm,
okay, wow, this is good, Andrea. I would love for you to. I have listeners who are desiring to change their trajectory in life. They're they want to write a book, they want to start a business, they want to be promoted, they want to forgive someone, they have
mm,
unforgiveness in their heart. Um, um, just a whole gamut of things. I also want to retire early because they want to do something different. They want to do what wisdom are some things that you could share with them that will open up the windows of their full potential, because a lot of them are not living in their full
mm.
potential.
Well, none of us truly are. I think those of us who are heading towards potential are the ones that are going to get there, but I don't
Hmm.
know that we ever will.
Hmm.
Every once you say open up the windows. I'm afraid that sometimes I throw a rock through a window if that's what it takes, but
Hmm.
and come crashing in. But there's a lot of adages. There's a lot of yesterday was the best time to start. Today's the second best time to start.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
won't, fail to plan to fail. There's things like that. But I think the most important thing for people to understand is that, just like you said, we have what we need. You would be surprised at the value that you do not recognize in yourself.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that I have learned over the last 5 or 6 years as I've run this business and tried to coach other people. I
Hmm.
don't have anything to give if I think I don't have anything to give.
Right.
And so therefore, when I'm looking at myself or anybody else who's ready to make a pivot, the biggest piece to understand is the value that is in you. And you have to
Hmm.
be willing to invest in you. If it means understanding who you are
Yes.
through understanding your core values or understanding how you communicate through DISC or Enneagram or any of those others, it is worth it. And it is imperative that you do that, because living with someone else's principles and
Hmm.
guidelines will never make you feel fulfilled. And
Hmm.
that's you will fail to impact your surroundings the way you should if
Hmm.
you are acting with the assumptions and beliefs that you've accepted because you just hadn't developed a clear understanding of who you
Hmm.
uniquely are, and how
Right.
you uniquely communicate and how you uniquely were created to show up in this world. You've got things to do, woman.
That's right.
You've
That's
got
right.
things to do.
That's
And
right.
it is a scary thing to throw open the windows all of a sudden and let the fresh air in. But what a beautiful thing. And if we're not here to support you, shame on us. That's our
Mhm.
job. And you'll be surprised. The other piece is you'll be surprised how many people around you will find what you're doing inspirational.
Mhm.
Every time they will be inspired by you.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. How can my listeners get in touch with you? I know that your website the Intentional Optimist.
You bet.
Okay.
Theintentionaloptimist.com.
Okay.
And right in there, you can find a way to get on my newsletter. I don't send that out very often, so I won't bother you. Um, or Stand Tall and Own It, my podcast.
Hmm.
If you find me on LinkedIn or Instagram and you want to DM me, I will DM you right back. I
Okay.
respond on those two platforms. I also will respond to any emails that come through. Andrea at theintentionaloptimist.com. You can
Hmm.
I worked hard to find a unique name because Andrea
Yeah.
Johnson, there's a lot of us out there.
Yeah.
So I worked hard to find something unique. You should be able to find me. If not, contact Cassandra. She knows how
That's
to get in touch with
right.
me.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I couldn't find you, because you don't go, but you have your name, but you don't go by that. You go by the intentional optimist. And I would never think to look at that when I was researching and looking for you. I'm like, well, where's Andrea Johnson? All you have to do was
Well, I try to tie them in, but there's just so many that it's just easier to do
yeah.
that with the intentional optimist. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to wrap this podcast up. I love Just Be You. You have provided so much wisdom and insight. And I always tell my listeners, if there is something that resonated with you, or you have a friend that you know that this would be a blessing to, please share it. It's going to be on all podcast platforms. It's also going to be on my social media sites as well. And I just want to thank Andrea. This was just a pleasure. I've learned, and if I've learned, listeners, I know you've learned. So back at you, just be you is critical. Okay. And again, I want to thank Andrea. And Andrea, I don't, for my guest, I never say bye. I just say bye for now.
For now.
For now. And God bless you. And you also know that my podcast is on every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much. And again, bye for now.